So welcome to today's session. I'm Nick Smith from the National Lottery Community Fund, and I'll be with you for the next hour. Just to let you know, we are recording today's session as well, so I hope that's okay for everybody. Welcome to our third knowledge series from the current Engaging Communities series, and today's session, Engaging Communities Building Helping Neighbourhoods, is all about how community groups and charities can support people to live healthier lives through connecting people with physical activities, promoting healthier lifestyles, creating local support networks. So you'll be hearing from, well, it was originally 4 grant holders, but we think it's now 3 grant holders because Adam can't make it. So you'll be hearing from 3 grant holders. We've got Daniel Allen, who's the Director and Communities Lead at Sportskey. We've got Gordon Knott, who is the CEO of Croydon Drop-In. And we've got Sonya Johnson with us today, who's the Chief Officer for Nuneaton and Bedworth Healthy Living Network. So thank you, everyone, for giving us your time today. We really do appreciate it. And we can't do these sessions without you. So thank you. So the first part of the session, we'll hear from those grant holders. Second part of the session, we'll move on to more of just a panel chat and questions. Also joining me today is my colleague Elvid Selman. He'll be making sure things go smoothly tech-wise, keeping an eye on the chat. He'll be sharing more information about our guests and links to useful resources as we go along as well. So if you have any questions, put them in the chat and Elvid will try his best to feed them into the conversation. So that's enough from me for the time being. So first of all, I'm going to hand over to Daniel from Sportskey just to introduce himself and tell him more about the work that Sportskey do. And Daniel, apologies, you were supposed to be going second, but now you're going first. So I hope you're okay with that, Daniel.
Yeah, no problems, Nick. Just take myself off mute. Hopefully everyone can hear me loud and clear. So as Nick mentioned, afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Allen, and I'm one of 3 directors for a Birmingham-based community interest company called Sportskey. Before I ramble on about what we currently do, it's probably worth backtracking to how we started. So I think it's fair to say that Sportskey started from fairly humble beginnings, almost over 10 years ago now. We started in one of the directors' mum's front room, where we sort of conceived the idea of Sportskey. I suppose for us, we grew up, the main directors, as 3 like-minded friends, and we was massive advocates of sport and physical activity and the power it had to transform lives and what it had done for our lives in terms of, yes, health benefits, but also in terms of the social connections we made through sport, the friendships, and just generally the wider benefits. But I suppose what really was the catalyst for Sportskey and the creation of Sportskey for us was the 2012 Olympics. Someone saying the sound is very poor. Hopefully everyone else can hear me. Yeah, it was the 2012 Olympics. It was quite clear after the Olympics that it didn't quite create the legacy of getting the nation active as was intended. Quite interestingly as well, a lot of the narrative around that time was that people, particularly from ethnically diverse communities and disadvantaged backgrounds, were still amongst the inactive in society, and that was a stubborn figure and piece of data that just didn't seem to be moving at the time. Interestingly, for me personally, I volunteered within what was called the sports and community development sector, and I witnessed for a long time sports governing bodies, agencies, sending coaches into some of these communities, and basically those coaches having the technical knowledge, but not quite having what we deemed as a cultural competency to really engage and connect with these communities. Sounds breaking up every now and again. Hopefully it isn't too bad for everyone else. So yeah, some of these coaches didn't have the technical, but they didn't have the cultural competency to connect with some of these communities on various social levels, we felt. So they really struggled in terms of really capturing that community and getting them active. And then we birthed Sportskey. And the idea and premise of Sportskey at the time was this low-cost, affordable model, non-committal, where we provided a range of numerous and various activities in the community that got people, particularly from ethnically diverse communities, active in a way that suits them. And that's effectively how we started and where the organisation sort of was birthed and born out of. And to fast forward to where we are today, so Sportskey as it stands, we operate in Northwest Birmingham. We provide a range of physical activity offers for our community, ranging from community football, netball, badminton, boxing, cycling. We even have a buggy runs program. So for any parents with young toddlers or babies that want to exercise, they can no longer use that as an excuse because we provide provision to allow them to exercise with their child. And yeah, we're just always constantly over the years thinking of ways that we can evolve and engage the community in ways that suit them best to be healthy and active through physical activity. We've also evolved in other areas. So we run a volunteer program. As I mentioned at the top of the piece, my whole career journey was sort of born from a volunteer to employment journey. So we try and replicate that with Sportskey with some of our young people. So every year we identify and take on young people from our community and we upskill them, we provide them with qualifications, and they go on and lead our sessions in various ways in terms of leading and supporting sessions, to helping to coordinate and manage events, to even supporting us with marketing, social media, and everything that comes with running our organisation as a whole, with the premise being that we empower them and support them into prominent positions, yes, within our organisation, but also externally with our partners and stakeholders. We also run a range of events. We run a youth sport and mentor program. So this particularly looks at young people aged 16 to 19 that are on the margins of society and need that guidance and support, particularly around youth violence and young people being at risk of being the perpetrator, but also a victim of youth violence. So that program looks at young people in terms of providing them with sport as a diversionary activity, but also in terms of mentoring them and getting to the real core and nucleus of some of the challenges that young people face in our areas. We run sports events, as I've mentioned. We also have what we call a community of practice. So we run and facilitate a collective group of local organisations that essentially are like us. They're doing great work in our community, have great diverse audiences, but actually don't understand or probably need a bit of help with some of the other woolly stuff that comes with running an organisation. So we provide workshops around accounting, governance, funding. We've done weird and wonderful stuff to cryptocurrency, to all sorts of things that us as organisations feel we can learn and develop as a collective ecosystem to grow and develop our organisations. So we lead and facilitate that, and we have a number of organisations to the tune of 20 that rotate and sit on those different workshops. And we also work with the organisations locally on various collaborative projects. So that's Sportskey in a nutshell, and that's some of the past and now present, and I'm sure a bit later we'll go on into the future. I don't know how long it's been. Sorry about that, Nick. I know people are having audio issues, so I don't know if that was shared right across the piece or not.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a pause every now and again, and then you have to, and then you catch up, sort of thing. So there is a little bit of a dropout, but we definitely got the gist of that, Daniel. And it looks like as well that some people have been sent a wrong meeting link previously as well, so people were joining halfway through. So apologies for that. It sounds like there's been a technical issue.
No problem.
But thank you, Daniel, and you're right, we will pick up some more of those in the conversation, so thank you very much. Next, I would like to hand over to Gordon Knott, Chief Executive Officer of Croydon Drop-In, to tell us more about the work that they're doing there. So over to you, Gordon.
Great, thanks a lot, Nick. Can you hear me okay?
That sounds good to me, Gordon. Okay, yeah, carry on.
Good. Welcome to colleagues who have found their way across into this bit of the virtual world. I'm Gordon Knott. I'm the Chief Exec of Croydon Drop-In, which is a charity formed in 1978. And as Daniel said, humble origins. Originally started in a baker's in Croydon in South London. And young people were invited in for teas and coffees and orange squashes, and eventually they bought a billiard table and gradually developed from there. So we're still in the same building. We've extended a bit out the back, so we do have rooms for counselling and therapy, and some office space. We've got 50 staff on the payroll at the moment. We have about 12 volunteers who work with us. Our reach is, well, I'll just go through the projects quickly as to who we're working with, but just a generic demographic, we're working 68% of our demographic is beneficiaries are from the BME community. 20% of our contacts are with parents, carers, guardians, foster carers and adopted parents. And we see just under 6,000 individuals each year. So the services that we're currently delivering, we have an advice, rights and advocacy worker, which is like an in-house citizens advice bureau. We have a counselling in the community offer for 10 to 25-year-olds. So this is a free offer delivered by counsellors and therapists, working on average around 12 to 15 sessions, but we are free to extend sessions, and we've got about 6 young people we're working with who have been working with for over a year, so we're not confined by 6 to 8 sessions. We offer counselling in schools and academies, so we're commissioned separately by those establishments to place counsellors on site in educational settings. We deliver, as you might know, the Trailblazer project, the mental health support teams as a national rollout. In Croydon, we deliver a couple of the waves along with our partners at Off the Record. Croydon CAMS deliver 1 wave, and the voluntary sector, us and Off the Record, we deliver 2 other waves. So that's to 28 schools and a school population of around 16,000. So that's very innovative in the last 3 years, and works really well. We have a parent-infant relationships service, which is working with parents to be up to 2 years old. So working with the real early years. So we're kind of covering from pregnancy right up to 25 years. And then obviously all the parents, carers, grandparents and adults that come to support those children. And then the last bit of our provision is the bit that the National Lottery is supporting us with at the moment, which is our outreach service. We have a bus, which we call the Talk Bus, which goes around the borough and pitches up. Basically, I usually say wherever there's a bit of pavement big enough, the bus will pitch up. It's got 3 youth workers on board, and we open up the doors, and people come on board and talk about what they need to talk about. We have therapists and youth workers on the provision, and usually, we rotate the locations, working in around 50 to 60 different locations across the borough every year. And under the outreach service, we work very closely with CAMS. So we have a thing called Safe Space, which is basically trying to stop young people going to A&E, and this is suicidal ideating and self-harming young people in crisis, trying to offer them a provision in the community. So we'll pitch up outside leisure centres, excuse me, in the shopping centre, Friday nights and Saturday lunchtimes, parks, outside schools, inside schools, sometimes in the playgrounds, and basically anywhere where young people congregate and socialise, hang out, come out of school. So working quite closely with the NHS, we've just about to launch a pilot where we're going to have CAMS workers on board for twice a week. So that feels quite innovative too. Excuse me. Under the outreach project, we have a service called Go Further, Go Higher, which is for 16 to 25-year-olds. That was aimed at young people, further education, higher education, and those in university as well, graduates, postgraduates. We see young people who are from Croydon originally, but might be in university in Glasgow or Manchester, wherever, coming back to Croydon, having either finished their courses or dropped out of their courses, and we're able to offer them a bit of support back in their home borough. We have a custody suite project. We're working with the 10+-year-olds who have been arrested and coming out of custody. We have a parent carer helpline that we run off the Talk Bus as well. We run the young people's team, so we have a participation group that outreach run, and this team also develops and presents workshops, health education workshops around sexuality, gender identity, drugs and alcohol, stress, sleep deprivation, And we've just made an animation film as well called A Cronk's Tale, which I'll probably talk about later because that's a bit of a current development. So that's in a nutshell, that's what we do.
Excellent. Thank you, Gordon. We're now going to hand over to Sonya Johnson, who is the Chief Officer for Nuneaton and Bedworth Healthy Living Network. So over to you, Sonya.
I'm not sure I can compete with what's just previously gone, but I can tell you a bit about what we do. So we started in 2003 as a NOF-funded project, and it was a collaboration of our local PCG, as it was at the time, local authority, and CVS, as it was at the time, coming together and writing a bid to NOF for an outreach health service that was community based. So everything that we did was all in outreach stations, so across the whole of the borough. We also commissioned services at that time as well. Fast forwarding probably 3 years when that funding ended, then we kind of limped on. We expanded and we shrank across the years, but working very closely with our public health team. We've always had a very good relationship with public health. And we developed a weight management service and a outreach health MOT service that was later commissioned by public health. We did a lot of work with public health around recording, monitoring, proving what we did was working and reporting back. So all of our services were outreach. So if I look at 2016, which was probably at our largest, we were delivering health MOTs, we got men's programs, we were delivering physical activity programs, complete day services where people would drop off older people and carers for the day, and we would keep them pretty much entertained for the whole day. Cookery courses, social eating, family focused activities and healthy eating. Because a lot of it was going along the food lines, we started working with Fair Share, and we paid for a year's worth of Fair Share deliveries. I don't know if anybody's come across Fair Share, but they are an organisation which will provide food for you at a subsidised rate that they resurplus. Well, we found that participation in a lot of our services started dropping off, and when we were doing some investigation and talking to people about why they weren't coming to a 6-week session, or why they were leaving halfway through a session, we found some common themes, and they were mental health, no money, relationships, and hunger. And keep coming back to, they couldn't function properly if they were hungry. They were feeding the children, but they were still hungry themselves. And we decided that we needed to focus more on food. However, the supply from Fair Share wasn't sufficient enough. We started looking around at what was available. We started talking to other organisations. And a long story short, in 2016, we inherited a very small food recycling project in North Warwickshire for our sins. And at that time, it was collecting probably 30 kilograms of food a week in surplus food. And fast forward to today, when we now take between 7 and 11 tonnes a week, and we have 163 community groups that we support locally with food, and as well as our direct services. So we also run social supermarket, Meals on Wheels services for older people using the food that we collect. We have a very strong relationship with Ocado Retail, who are less than 5 miles up the road from our now warehouse that we run from. We have 3 warehouses there now. So I'd like to think of us as an independent Fair Share. However, we tailor our services to community need. So it's not a one-size-fits-all model. We work very, very closely with the community groups and the communities that we provide food for, and look at what their needs are, and learning from what didn't work with us with Fair Share and trying to tailor that service. We still do a lot of the health work, but within the food now. So if I look at our Edible Links project, so the project went on to become Edible Links, and that's our funded project. So Edible Links now runs a social supermarket that we started really because the stuff from FareShare, the food that we got from FareShare, we couldn't use anywhere else, and trying to have a health agenda was very difficult to use that food, and that was another reason that we stopped providing through FareShare. So we used to stick a little table out and let people help themselves, and we saw the difference that this made to people, and how we began to build trust with people, and how their mindsets changed once they were no longer hungry. And we've been able to build from that, if you like. So now a lot of our volunteers are previous service users, or very, very local people with other issues. So we have 54 volunteers now, which is an 11-to-1 ratio on staff. And our social supermarket now, which went from the little honesty table, if you like, up to now we've got 2 sites for 2 shops, and we open 4 days a week. And we're looking to expand that through, through the volunteers. Volunteers are all trained in health messages, so they give one-to-one support to people when they come in, but they do it on a very soft basis. We're not sitting people down and telling them you've got to have a healthy diet before they start. What we've done is we've devised a picking list that people can choose, because we don't want to do 2 people. So our customers come and choose their own food, but we make sure it's stocked with healthy food. They donate for their food. It's very reasonably priced, but it makes the project sustainable in the longer term. We do a lot of collaborative working, so we're seen locally almost as the conduit between the community and the professionals. We keep trying to tell the professionals about getting out behind desks, getting out into the community. You've got to be seen to be working alongside people, and they will come to our social supermarket, and they will work alongside people, and that's how we kind of are building up trust between the community and our statutory sectors, that can be then used for better purposes. So our personal shoppers, which are volunteers, they give one-to-one advice and support around healthy eating, and they all have training in food hygiene, but then 5-a-day messages, key 5-a-day health messages, how to support people to achieve a balanced diet, and 5-a-day. And then we also have cookery programs alongside that if people wish to participate in that. I'm going to wrap it up there.
Thank you very much, Sonia. Wow, what varied approaches, and all very interesting as well. So thank you very much. Before we move on to the chat, I just want to say again, I hope everybody's now in the right meeting. It seems like there was a mix-up with the link previously, so apologies on behalf of the National Lottery Community Fund for that. But the numbers look good, 161. So hopefully everybody's in the right meeting, which is about building health in neighbourhoods, engaging communities. So great stuff. So for the second part of the session now, we're going to move into more of just a panel chat and discussion about some of the things we've heard there. If you've got any questions, put them in the chat, and Elvid will try and bring them into the conversation as well, the best that he can. So Sonia, I think if I start with you, if that's okay, we ended with you, let's start with you for the next section. So we heard about what your project's doing at Edible Links and stuff like that, but I know that only touches on a few of the things you were doing. So what approaches have you found effective in engaging communities to get more involved in their own health and others' health? I know you mentioned something about like the volunteers and the soft touch approach and stuff like that, but what have you found really works with engaging communities?
Once you're in a community and you're working in a community, it's about building up the trust. So I think, we've been doing it for quite a long time now, and we have built up a lot of trust. We have a lot of followers. We have a huge social media following, which is extremely useful, but also quite difficult to manage. But, it is worth it, we find. A couple of things that I'd thought about that people might find interesting, which is away from food. we used to run a men's health programme, and one of the things that worked extremely well with engaging men in their own health was competition. So we used to turn up at working men's clubs or pubs. We used to do a lot of work with Wetherspoons. 7:30 a.m. turn up at Wetherspoons when, you know, your hardened drinkers, your hardened smokers are in there. And we would turn up with a set of scales and some blood pressure machines, and we'd set up a competition to start with to see who'd got the best and the worst health. And we would go back every single week and get them to improve. And we saw through them supporting one another, them starting to cut down on their alcohol, starting to make changes to their diet, but also, you know, encouraging other people to do it as well and taking that home with them. And men can be one of the really toughest, we found, groups, because they're very stoical. They don't think that health relates to them. You know, a lot of the people we were working with were telling us, you know, I smoke 20 cigarettes a day. I smoke, you know, I drink 5 pints at lunchtime, 5 pints at tea time. I haven't seen a doctor for 15 years. There's nothing wrong with me. You know, the ticking time bomb that we all know about. But by doing that and setting that competition, it was just igniting an interest. And it was something that we used again and again and again. And whether that was taxi drivers that we did some work with, before we started work with Ocado on food, we went in, we used to do the night shift at Ocado when they changed shift at 12 o'clock. And again, we would do exactly the same. We would open people's lunch boxes up if they got lunch boxes, and we'd start showing them round, you know, getting them to talk about and comment on people's lunch boxes. So the competition worked really well. And with parents, we find that targeting health of the children. So rather than saying it's your health or your family's health, it's about, you know, how could we just maybe do something in your day-to-day life that might improve the life of your child, you know, and getting them to tell us what they think they could do. And then, right, well, how can we help you to do that? And then making it happen. Don't make promises that you can't keep. Absolutely do not make promises that you can't keep. Managing expectations.
I think there's some really good advice in there. A lot of I've heard you use the word trust quite a lot as well, Sonya, about in your introduction, and just as well. So I can see that's an important thing for you there. But I'm glad you touched on the concept of men's mental health and men's health as well, because the other guest was going to talk about men's health and he hasn't been able to make it. So I'm really happy. What I kind of heard there, and I'll come to you next, Gordon, and then Daniel, I'm going to come to you, and I'm just going to ask you, Daniel, when I come to you, to introduce yourself again, because a couple of people missed you at the start. So just a brief introduction, but I'll come to you in a bit, Daniel. Gordon, what I heard there from Sonya was a bit about meeting people where they're at, making it easy for them to access services, so supermarkets, at Wetherspoons and places like that. And that kind of that resonated with me when you were talking about the talk bus, and you're going to schools, you're going to playgrounds and stuff like that. So how important is that in engaging people as well, meeting them where they're at?
Yeah, can I just say, like, sitting between a colleague that's advocating healthy eating, the other one's advocating exercise, you know, I've got that male competitive urge here to do something when we finish this sedentary session. And just as a brief aside, I mean, this is really good stuff. My kind of brain is on fire. In Croydon during the post-COVID, the voluntary sector delivered more food parcels than the local authority. You know, that is the power of the community that I'm sure we're not alone in Croydon in the VCS down here, but, you know, just hearing about the impact we can make on the community. So, you know, with regards to engaging the community, you know, when you overlay our map of delivery, of talk bus delivery, on the borough's map of deprivation, it matches exactly. And that is no coincidence. You know, this is a service that's been going for 25 years, the tour bus, and over the years we've fine-tuned it and we've responded to the need. And as much as I hate to stereotype the deprived wards of the borough, that we know historically, you know, that residents in those wards are historically discriminated against on so many levels, whether that's mental health, physical health, education, employment. So, you know, there is an element of targeting where we pitch up, you know, to try and make sure that we're reaching the community, because a lot of these individuals are never going to go to a CAMS office. They're never going to go to institutions, you know, where again they will face discrimination or you know, unfair treatment. So that was the purpose of the bus, really, is to go where the community is and you know, and engage, you know, with them on those spots. When people say to me, Croydon Drop-In never heard of you, you know, with my PR hat on, I say, well, that's a good thing, because if you had heard of us, you would have been in emotional distress or looking for support. So I'm glad you haven't heard of us, because you didn't need us. But on the other hand, being, you know, taking the PR hat off, I think it's a drip approach. It's like, you know, you can put a flyer out, 3 months later, it's fish and chip wrappers or it's gone. Social media, you put something online and it's gone within, you know, we're bombarded by messages. So I think in terms of the messaging, a lot of this is word of mouth. And as Sonya said, trust. You know, we're relationship builders, and it's all about the relationship. And what also Sonya said at the end, it's all about not making false promises. One of the, you know, strap lines that we say is that if we can't support you, we promise we'll find someone who can, and we'll commit to that promise. You know, not over promising saying we can fix everything, because the reality, none of us can do this alone. But the reality is, you know, we have to reach out to each other and use the resources that are available to us, you know, in the vicinity. And not everybody wants to be directed to an app or a website. That works for some people, but, you know, let's talk about the rise of face-to-face back again. It took a beating during COVID, but actually let's not underestimate the importance of actually, you know, physically engaging with the community.
Thank you, Gordon. And Daniel, as I said, I'll come to you as well. Did that resonate with you, what you've heard and about, you know, approaches that you found effective in engaging communities? But first of all, introduce yourself again and just in a sentence what Sportskey does. Sorry, Daniel.
No problem at all, Nick, and hopefully everyone can hear me loud and clear without any interruptions. I won't do the whole backstory, but I will talk about who Sportskey is and what we currently do. So my name's Daniel, for those that missed it. I'm Director and Communities Lead for a Birmingham-based community interest company called Sportskey. In essence, what Sportskey do is we use sport and physical activity, as it sort of says in the name, to really try and affect change in our community and get the community more active. We do that in a variety of ways. So currently we have a suite of engagement activities, from community football, community netball, badminton, boxing, cycling, buggy runs. There's probably some that I've actually missed, but typically we're out there in the community trying to get them active across a suite of different engagement approaches, essentially. We also have a volunteer program which looks at upskilling, empowering young people from our community and providing them with the qualifications in which they are then redeployed back into the organisation services and sessions, and effectively they're our future leaders. At some point they'll take over from me and I'll be sort of in the rocking chair chilling. We also have a youth sport and mentor program, which again mentors young people who are at the margins of society, dealing with elements around youth crime, antisocial behaviour. So that program provides them with sport, but also a layer of mentorship and really understanding the challenges of those young people and how we can support them. We run a range of social events in our community that brings people together alongside the sport and physical activity. And we also run a community of practice, which I mentioned a bit earlier, is effectively us leading a movement of other organisations within our community, which is Northwest Birmingham, where effectively we attend workshops on various different topics that help us all grow and develop together. So those workshops have ranged from governance to funding to accounting to all the things that we think within our community, some of our leaders need that extra holding hand support in order to develop that organisation, which already does great work and affects change amongst various people within their ecosystem. So that's what's in a nutshell. What I probably didn't mention earlier is we have a membership of in and around 1,600 people. Of that membership, 97% are from ethnically diverse communities. So the core of why we started and where we started from, which I spoke about earlier, it's great to know that 10 years down the line, we're staying quite true to that core. And 60% of our audience are from the bottom 10 and 20% most deprived areas of Birmingham and wider afield. So that's sports key in essence.
Daniel, can I ask about how do you engage that community then? How do you work with them? How do you find them? How do you get them involved in your services?
I think the main thing is where we started. The main thing for us was finance being a barrier, because we recognised as right across the nation now, given the after effects of COVID and the cost of living crisis, but finance was a key caveat to our community. So when someone attends a sports key session, it's low cost in comparison with any other health interventions they might find out there, but also we provide everything. So if you take a typical badminton session, for instance, we provide all the equipment, so there's as much excuses are removed as possible for people to engage. I think another key thing which was mentioned, I think by Gordon, and taking activity to where people are. We're not in one set place in Northwest Birmingham. We utilise a range of different leisure centres and community centres across the area, because we recognise that people don't always travel across wards. So we try and really go out there and be really mobile as an organisation in terms of where we deliver our activity. And just to add to that, I think for us, our environments are quite dynamic. We utilise music and we utilise a lot of culture within our programmes, which range from food to knowledge to engaging with people, because we recognise that those things for our community, yes, there's sport, but actually it's the social connections, it's talking to people, it's people understanding some of their culture and things that other people in wider society may just not get. That's what really brings people back and gets them engaging. And what we've found has been, because we've tried everything from refer a friend and you get a t-shirt, to all sorts of measures to try and get people through the door to get more active. But I think what's been one of our strongest tools is community ownership. We've found that over the years, the more we give the community ownership in what we do, the more they become our sort of singing birds of praises. They're the ones who go out there and actually champion what we do. And it's our biggest tool is word of mouth. And what we've found is that within our sessions, by just making beneficiaries into senior leadership roles, that could be something as simple as we've got a beginner side in some of our sessions. We get one of our best beneficiaries be the sort of manager of our beginner side, and they really sort of mobilize where people are on the court or whatever the session may be, to even letting some of our beneficiaries be the person that welcomes people through the door. And we found that through that model, and then that leading on to people from our sessions who have got skills, then being on our board and our advisory board, people just champion the work that we do locally, to the point where word of mouth is just one of our biggest tools. So we found community ownership has been really important for us, and even providing those within the sessions with something as simple as a t-shirt, they feel an association and affinity with the organisation, and effectively they're retained, and that helps them retain others as well. So they do some of the hard work for us, basically.
Yeah, I love that. I love that about the t-shirt as well. And this, you mentioned about giving people roles and seeing them in the organisation. I think Sonya mentioned volunteers as well, and is there an importance of volunteers as well, and people seeing people like them, that they can come and they can get involved and they can make changes, they can improve their health, and they can help others as well. Go ahead, Daniel, and then I'll come to you, Sonya, because I know you had your hand up as well.
So interjected there, Sonya. No, I mentioned volunteers, and we've got a volunteer program, as I mentioned, which is all about empowering young people. At the core, for us as an organisation, but me personally, when I sort of, I suppose, immerse myself in a sort of world of employment, and leaving uni and then trying to get a job within the sector, it was very difficult. And I think for me, and others, particularly young people from our community, it can be very difficult without having a wealth of experience, although you might have the qualifications, to really find employment, even within the sport, physical activity and community development sector. So for us, that volunteer ecosystem is very important. And for us, young people developing in our environment, which then gives them the confidence, the skills, to then go out and get employment elsewhere is very important. But we found that actually, when we're developing young people, they're actually teaching us stuff that we didn't know. So particularly from a social media marketing perspective, we have young people just really driving that basically. And we find that they're much more progressive than probably we are in those areas. So yeah, the volunteer program for us is very important, and one of the most powerful things that we try and provide, and that we really think is our future effectively. So that's just my 10 pence on that.
Thank you, Daniel. And Sonia, I know you had your hand up at one point and then down again.
It was just a very quick one, just to say one of the things that we've done effectively to engage people in an area that we've never ever worked in before is we've got a very well liveried van that we will take to an area and set up, and we will give out free food. And it's just using food as a tool to start a conversation, and then once you start the conversation, building from that. So that was all really.
Thank you, Sonia. No, it's really interesting. Thank you. Gordon, if I can come to you with my next question. And I heard bits of it coming through in what Sonia was talking about, and Daniel as well, but how important are partnerships and networks in the work that you do to address community challenges? So whether that's linking up with other services, avoiding duplication, referring to each other's services, how important is that partnership network approach for you?
Yeah, just a word on volunteers before I get into that is just to say that the majority of our staff are ex-volunteers. So it's been a really good recruitment route in. So I think it goes without saying that actually, if you want a foot in the door, then often volunteering with services and see how that goes. And if paid work comes up, then you're obviously in a good position to apply for it. In terms of partnerships, absolutely crucial. I mean, I think that one of the elephants in the room, especially around VCS, field voluntary and community services, is that often we're competing for funding. And I mean, the relationship I've got with some of the other VCSs in Croydon, it's open. So we'll be open about if we're going for a pot of money, then we'll say, are you going for that as well? Do we go it alone or do we go together? And I think, especially in recent years where resources are tighter and tighter, writing funding bids is a huge outlay of time and effort. So if you can find some traction with somebody else, that's helpful. I think partnerships are hard because sometimes it is difficult to find that common ground and what are you going to deliver and what are we going to deliver and how you're going to split the work. But having said that, partnerships are also everything. The network is everything. The context that we've got, we spend a lot of time building relationships. That's not just with commissioners and funders and potential, people who are going to resource us, but with those other services to whom, because like I said earlier, none of us can do this alone. So you need the network to know who you can refer to and where to refer to. And because, Croydon's difficult place for the last 3 years because the borough's gone bankrupt, as you'll be finding out in Birmingham, I'm sure, and other places. First they close the libraries and then they start taking away social services and all the rest of it. And then, well, we won't get into that now because we all know the politics around that. But that's, with the absence of statutory services being pulled back, a lot of pressure on the voluntary community sector to plug the gap. And obviously we're not resourced to anywhere near the state the statutory sector is resourced. So, there is that tension, I suppose, within our projects that actually we can only do as much as we can do. And, I'm really hopeful. I've been in this game for 30 years now, and I've hated the hierarchy that's existed in voluntary and community sector. Have always been bottom of the pecking order, and yet again and again we prove our worth, we prove our professional abilities, and we prove that we're linked into the communities. We respond flexibly, creatively. It doesn't take us 6 months to get a flyer or a poster out, that kind of really grassroots kind of stuff. That's, anyway, let's not go down that path. You asked me about partnerships. I'm telling you it's important.
Yeah, we'll hold that thought because we might come to that if we've got time in a bit. And the interesting about council bankruptcies as well, because we've just done an internal piece of work around that about how we can try and support what we should be looking for to help communities with that. Before I come to you, Daniel, I'm just going to invite my colleague Elved to come on screen because I think he's got something from the chat.
Yes, hello. Just while we're talking about networking and partnerships, we've had a question in the chat, and I see, Daniel, that you're coming up next, but we've had a question about your community of practice, talking about the sort of the practical stuff around that, what venues do you use, how do you get the ball rolling on that? So I'd invite you just to, in your answer coming up, if you could also talk to that a bit, that'd be great, thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Alf. Just before that, completely echo the sentiment of Gordon in terms of some of those challenges. And like you mentioned, obviously Birmingham City Council have faced similar cuts, which makes it challenging, not just for the council, but also everything connected upwards to the council. And that's why I really champion, yes, those partnerships with agencies and some of the more strategic bodies. We, due to my professional experience and some of the directors, work with those partners within our local area. And I think Sonya might have mentioned it earlier, we feel as though we're the conduit between those professional relationships and those local change makers on the ground. And that's why we effectively started the community of practice, because we are well versed as an organization in terms of we're quite long standing, we've been running a long time, very local, small organizations which range from dance organizations to music to sports organizations a bit similar to us. All sorts of organizations that do great work in the community would contact us, be like, well, what does your governance look like? Well, okay, well, how did you access that funding and what was the stepping stones to doing that? Or, okay, if I need to access that type of funding, what are the challenges? What are the things I need to have in place? So we said, actually, we could sit down with every organization, because we know they're doing great work and we've got personal connections in the community with those organizations. But actually, wouldn't it be more powerful for us to learn together? Because we've by no means got all the answers, but yes, we are sort of spearheading in certain areas. So we started the community of practice as an ecosystem where we come together collectively. So that at one point was once a month, particularly on the back end of COVID. We would invite a facilitator in to effectively teach us a 2-hour workshop about what we don't know. And that effectively went on for about a year in terms of these organizations learning with us. What does the marketing look like? What does governance look like? What do all these things that make an organization operate and develop need to look like in order to grow? What we then found was, whilst that information was great, with a lot of organizations who are in the community, most of them are largely voluntary. We were ourselves for the first 6 years of Sportskey. Whilst the information is great, it sits on a shelf, because a lot of the people and volunteers within the organizations haven't got the time to take that information off the shelf and practically use it. So where we are now with the community of practice is actually, how can we provide some sort of support that handholds each organization that is effectively a founding member within the community of practice to really provide them with capacity to develop the areas that are important to them, basically. So that's where we are now. So what's been great is that what started as workshops, people learning, now providing with some extra support from our organization that handholds organizations, we're now getting to a place where we're actually developing this local consortium partnership, which actually, when we dig a bit deeper in terms of data, actually Sportskey engages thousands of people, these other organizations engage hundreds of people. So when we map it out across Birmingham, we're actually engaging people in Birmingham and audiences at a massive scale. And actually, the consortium is very powerful in terms of the organizations that are on it. And actually, we could be in a quite powerful position to look at a partnership approach, which basically looks at wider funding, and therefore organizations that aren't well versed to get funding, maybe the consortium is the conduit to get them funding within their organizations, to enable them to run and operate to a larger level. So that's where we are with the community practice, but it's an evolving piece of work. But I would definitely champion other organizations and entities to look at what's in their area, because ultimately a lot of organizations locally feel as though they're left out. They don't quite connect to the statutory partners that are within the system locally. We took some of our community practice organizations to some of the meetings that we attend with agencies, and one of them described it as a secret society. They were blown away with the level of information just what they didn't know. So that's our approach to it. And the community practice is probably one of the most meaningful piece of work outside of the sports stuff that we do, that we're really, I suppose, excited about.
Sounds
Hopefully
really
that answers some of the question.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, Daniel, because when you mentioned about you as an organisation helping supporting other organisations, and you mentioned the hand holding and stuff like that, we often feel that we're in quite a good place as a grant holder to be able to make connections and across organisations doing similar work across the UK and stuff like that. And it's an area that I feel that we could always explore a bit more. Crikey, the time is flying by. I'm just going to ask one, Sonya, I'm going to come to you next, and I'm just going to ask you, and it's something that Gordon touched on about what the voluntary and community sector is actually doing on the ground at grassroots level and all this great work. Do you think that that's understood higher up the chain and appreciated? And I've come to you first because I know you were talking about working with public health. So for me, it seems like maybe you've made great strides there, where others are still feeling a bit like we're doing all this great work and it's not recognised.
Going back to when we very first started, we had to be able to prove everything that we did. So, you know, it was very important from the very beginning that we record baseline data of everybody that we start working with, and then measure that data periodically and be able to report upon it, because the big drive of public health is always around statistics and data and, you know, proving that what you do makes a difference and makes it worth it. It was also to our detriment because we were able to prove that what we did worked extremely well, to the point that they commissioned it and put it out to a larger organisation who'd got no idea about working with community. But, you know, that's just an aside. However, public health helped us as well to identify the type of data that they wanted that was meaningful for them and how to be able to record that. So I would say to any other organisation, look at what skills and capacity and knowledge and abilities are around you with the partners that you work with, because it may not be money that they can give you, but it may be sharing their expertise to help you to set up systems, procedures and processes that will help you to drive a way forward and open the eyes of other people. It worked for us, is all I can say, and it's something that we still do. You know, we still record the data of everybody that we work with in some way, shape or form, and case studies are so important. The real life case studies of people, they're just priceless, absolutely priceless, because the data can tell you everything, the statistics can tell you anything, but it's the people who give you the real evidence that what you do makes a difference.
And that's what people can relate to, isn't it, Sonya? It's those case studies, it's those real life examples of someone coming to your organisation, being supported, being helped. I completely agree with that. Look, we're into the last 5 minutes, so my very final question, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds each to a minute on this, and this is just about your opportunity to tell everybody here today what's coming up for you that you're looking forward to. So what projects, what different community groups you're going to be working with, scaling, trying something different, just an opportunity for you to tell us what you're looking forward to over the coming months. And I will start with, well, who wants to go first? I know I've just thrown that on you. So has anybody got an elevator pitch ready for me? Go ahead, Daniel.
It's not quite an elevator pitch in any way, shape or form, and I'll try and be as quick as possible, Nick. I think for us, as I mentioned, I've mentioned it quite a lot, the community practice is an exciting piece of work for us. I think how we can evolve something which doesn't look at our own organisation internally, but actually affects externally our area in quite a big way. And I know that one of the ambitions of our community practices, can we have or look at, and this is very long term, a building almost like a hub where all of our services operate and run from what will be a centralized hub. Now that is a massive ambition, but of course, if we can get anywhere near that, that would be magnificent in our local community and area. A big piece that we're excited about as well is being more inclusive as a provider. How can we, yes, we engage people of all ages and abilities in our community, but we've just started work around inclusive activity. So we try and wheelchair basketball, and that's been great. And actually we're finding that the mixture of those that are wheelchair users mixed with those that are able-bodied, but being in the same space and everyone feeling though they're on a level playing field has been wonderful. So we're likely to pursue that a bit more. And yeah, I think for us, I think we've got a wonderful community inventory. So it feels like every day I'm out in the community doing stuff, or we're out doing stuff. But I think for us, it's that enterprise journey now, how we build on some of the more enterprising stuff that we have now identified we've actually got an ability to lead on. So that's some of the stuff that's emerging for us for Sportskey, and hopefully that was quick.
Thanks, Daniel. Sonya, over to you next.
Well, now we're on a solid base and everything's set up with Edible Links, which is our big food project. We're now looking to embed more health activities and health initiatives within that. And we're also now looking at geographically expanding across the border into another project and potentially more providers of food. So getting larger.
Real great stuff. Thank you, Sonya. And Gordon, over to you.
Yeah, firstly, to agree with, it's all about outcomes, not outputs. So get your case studies sorted, get your quotes and feedback from beneficiaries, because that says as much as the numbers do. In terms of our approach is to stay curious, stay compassionate, and be courageous. You know, we've got to stick to the principles of you know, fighting for social justice and staying true to those. And in practical terms, the charity will continue to work constructively with the issue of youth violence, which unfortunately the borough is blighted by. So we will continue to do what we can around keeping young people safe. And also, as the last point, increasing number of neurodiverse young people coming through. So we're doing some really exciting new work around autism and associated neurodiversity.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gordon. And that was perfect timing, everyone. Thank you so much. My colleague Albit's going to pop up a quick poll, just a snapshot, precursor to more feedback you'll get in your email. But can I just thank all panel members for a really interesting session and for giving their time so generously and their insights today. I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks to Elved too. As I say, he's just going to pop up a quick poll if it hasn't come up already. This is the third session in a run of 4 events, so we have 1 session left, and Daniel touched on it, and it's around engaging young people in volunteering and social action and stuff like that. So Daniel, you might want to come to our next session. Albert will post it in the link. But finally, thanks to all of you for coming along today, and hope to see you at future events. Apologies for the bit of the mix-up at the start there, but the session is recorded and we will share it with you, so you'll be able to see the full session. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Likewise. Thank you all. Bye now.
Bye.